punch. And I'm not talking about some basic power-up or lucky victory. No, no, no. What Oda has been setting up for Zoro is so much deeper and more complex than that. We're talking about a complete evolution of what it means to be a swordsman in the One Piece world. And trust me, once you see the full picture, you'll never look at Zoro's journey the same way again. Let's start with the cold, hard truth. Right now, Mihawk is on a completely different level than Zoro. And I mean completely different.
When they first clashed at Brochier,
Mihawk didn't even need to use Yoru. He defeated Zoro with what was basically a fancy butter knife. That's not disrespect to Zoro, that's just showing how astronomically powerful Mihawk really is. But here's what makes Mihawk so terrifying as an opponent. It's not just his raw strength or his sword skills, it's his mastery over what we now know are the fundamental elements of top-tier swordsmanship in One Piece. First, there's his observation haki, which is so refined that he can predict and counter attacks before they even happen. We've seen glimpses of this throughout the series. Then there's his armament haki, which allowed him to turn Yoru into a permanent black blade. And guys, we cannot understate how big of a deal this is. Black blades aren't just weapons, they're the physical manifestation of a swordsman's will and mastery. Mihawk has achieved something that even legendary figures struggled with, but most importantly, Mihawk possesses what I like to call true swordsman's intent.
remember what he told Zoro at Brochier?
A sword without conviction is no sword at all. Mihawk doesn't just swing a blade, every cut he makes is backed by absolute certainty and purpose. His attacks aren't just physical, they're spiritual. And let's talk about his ridiculous feats for a second. The man casually sliced through mountain-sized icebergs at Marineford like they were made of paper. He can send flying slashes across vast distances with pinpoint accuracy. Now, here's where things get really interesting, because while everyone assumes Zoro will beat Mihawk by becoming a better version of Mihawk, I think Oda is setting up something completely different. Zoro isn't going to surpass Mihawk by copying his style. He's going to surpass him by transcending the very concept of traditional swordsmanship. Let's look at what makes Zoro unique. First, there's his three-sword style, which is already something no other swordsman in One Piece has mastered to this level. But it's not just about using three swords, it's about the philosophical implications of this style. Traditional swordsmanship is about the harmony between swordsman and blade. Zoro has created harmony between himself and three separate weapons, each with their own spirit and personality. We've seen this evolution with his cursed blade, Sandai Kitetsu, which he tamed through sheer willpower. Then there's Shusui, which chose him as its wielder, and now Enma, which is literally training Zoro by forcing him to control his haki output. These aren't just weapons, they're partners in his journey. But here's the real kicker, Zoro's Conquerors Haki. When this was revealed during his fight with King, it changed everything about his potential ceiling. Mihawk has never been confirmed to have Conquerors Haki, but Zoro absolutely does. And we're not talking about basic Conquerors Haki. Zoro can coat his attacks with it just like the Yonko. Think about what this means for swordsmanship. Conquerors Haki is the manifestation of one's will to stand above others, to never bow down, to carve your own path through sheer force of spirit. When you combine that with sword techniques, you're not just cutting through physical matter, you're cutting through the very fabric of reality with your willpower. And let's talk about Ashura, Zoro's ultimate technique. This isn't just a sword technique, it's something that borders on the supernatural. Zoro manifests additional arms and swords through pure spiritual energy. We still don't fully understand how this works, but it suggests that Zoro's potential goes beyond what any traditional swordsman, including Mihawk, can achieve. The pattern is clear. While Mihawk represents the pinnacle of traditional swordsmanship, Zoro represents evolution. He's not bound by the conventional rules of what a swordsman should be. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of how Zoro is actually going to close this gap in terms of raw power. Because while his unique style gives him an advantage, he still needs to match Mihawk's ridiculous level of mastery. First up, Conqueror's Haki coating. We saw Zoro use this against King, but he clearly hasn't mastered it yet. Right now, it seems to activate unconsciously when he's pushed to his limits. But imagine Zoro with full control over Conqueror's Haki coating. We're talking about attacks that don't just cut through physical defenses, but overwhelm opponents on a spiritual level. The implications are insane. Zoro could potentially cut through any defense, no matter how strong, by attacking with the force of his willpower itself. This would put him on the same level as Kaido, Big Mom, and the other Yonko who can use advanced Conquerors Haki. Then there's the Black Blade situation. Enma is already responding to Zoro's Haki in ways that suggest it's on the path to becoming a Black Blade. But here's what's really crazy. If Zoro manages to turn all three of his swords into Black Blades simultaneously, he'd be doing something that no swordsman in history has ever accomplished. Think about it. Mihawk turned one legendary blade black. Ryuma turned Shusui black. But 3 black blades at once? That would require a level of Haki control and spiritual strength that's completely unprecedented. It would be like having 3 Yoru-level weapons at the same time. But wait, there's more. Zoro's connection to the Shimotsuki family is starting to pay dividends. We learned that he has ties to both Shimotsuki Kozaburo, who forged Enma and Wado Ichimonji, and potentially to the legendary samurai Ryuma himself. This bloodline connection might unlock genetic memories or inherited techniques that even Mihawk doesn't have access to. But the real key to Zoro's victory won't be strength. It'll be something much more fundamental. And it has nothing to do with sword techniques or Haki mastery. It's about the fundamental difference in their approaches to strength and what it means to be the world's strongest swordsman. Mihawk achieved his title through pursuit of perfection. He refined his technique, mastered his Haki, and eliminated any weakness in his fighting style. He's like a master craftsman who spent decades perfecting his art, and the result is undeniable. But Zoro represents something different. Zoro's strength doesn't come from perfection. It comes from his unbreakable will to protect his crew and achieve his dream. Every major power-up Zoro has received came not from training or technique, but from moments when his determination transcended his physical limitations. Remember Thriller Bark? Zoro literally absorbed all of Luffy's pain and exhaustion and walked it off through sheer willpower. That's not technique, that's the manifestation of an unshakable spirit. Against Mr. One, Zoro learned to cut steel not through better sword work, but by understanding the breadth of all things. A philosophical concept that allows him to cut anything or nothing based on his intent. Against King, Zoro's breakthrough came when he fully accepted his conqueror's nature and decided to become the king of hell himself. Again, this wasn't about learning new moves. It was about embracing who he truly is. While Mihawk represents the ceiling of traditional swordsmanship, Zoro represents the evolution beyond those limits. Mihawk cuts with perfect technique and overwhelming power. Zoro will cut with the force of his unbreakable will and his absolute refusal to let anything stop him from achieving his dream. And here's the kicker. Mihawk himself has hinted at this. When he trained Zoro, Mihawk recognized that Zoro's greatest strength isn't his skill with a blade. It's his loyalty to his crew and his unwavering determination. This is why their final battle won't just be about who's the better swordsman. It'll be about 2 different philosophies of strength clashing. Mihawk's perfected technique versus Zoro's unlimited will. And in the world of One Piece, will always triumphs over skill when pushed to its absolute limit. So when and how will this legendary showdown actually happen? Because the timing and circumstances of Zoro versus Mihawk will be just as important as the fight itself. I think the setup is already being put in place through Cross Guild. Mihawk, Crocodile, and Buggy have formed this alliance, and they're actively hunting Marines and making moves in the New World. This puts them on a collision course with the Straw Hats, especially as we head into the final war. But here's what I think will make their confrontation even more meaningful. It won't happen in isolation. The final war is going to involve every major faction in One Piece. The world government, the Revolutionary Army, all the Yonko crews, everyone with skin in the game. And in the middle of this chaos, Zoro and Mihawk will finally settle their long-awaited duel. Picture this. The world is literally falling apart around them. Ancient weapons are firing, Conquerors Haki is clashing across battlefields, and the fate of everything hangs in the balance. And in the middle of all this chaos, 2 swordsmen face each other for the title of World's Strongest. I don't think this will be a fight to the death. Mihawk has been waiting his entire life for someone worthy to challenge him. He's been bored, sitting at the top with no one even close to his level. When Zoro finally reaches that point where he can give Mihawk the fight he's been craving, I think Mihawk will be genuinely excited. The fight itself will push both of them beyond their limits. Zoro will have to utilize everything: his three-sword style, his Conquerors Haki coating, potentially multiple black blades, and his connection to the Shimotsuki lineage. But ultimately, Zoro will win not because he's learned better techniques or gained more power, but because his will to protect his crew and achieve his dream will prove stronger than Mihawk's pursuit of perfection. In that moment, Zoro will transcend the traditional concept of swordsmanship and create something entirely new. And I think Mihawk will recognize this. He'll realize that Zoro hasn't just surpassed him in strength, he's evolved the entire concept of what it means to be a swordsman. Mihawk will pass on the title willingly, knowing that the art of the sword is in good hands. Look, Zoro surpassing Mihawk isn't just inevitable. It's been the entire point of his character arc since Chapter 1. But the way Oda is setting it up goes so much deeper than just student surpasses master. Zoro represents the evolution of swordsmanship itself. While Mihawk perfected the traditional path, Zoro is creating an entirely new one. His three-sword style, his Conquerors Haki, his unbreakable will, his loyalty to his crew. All of these elements combine to create something that transcends what any swordsman before him has achieved. When Zoro finally claims the title of world's strongest swordsman, he won't just be stronger than Mihawk. He'll have redefined what that title even means. He'll prove that true strength doesn't come from perfection, but from an unshakable will to protect what matters most to you. And honestly, I think that's exactly the kind of message Oda wants to send. In a world full of perfect villains and seemingly impossible odds, it's the imperfect hero with an unbreakable spirit who rises above them all. He'll show us all what it really means to be strong. And that's why his journey to becoming the world's strongest swordsman is going to be one of the most satisfying payoffs in all of One Piece.